Hello and welcome again to another episode of Learn the TOEFL the Easy Way with Teacher Fish. For today's discussion, we will have the first half of a two-part video about the ways you can earn a perfect score in the independent writing task of the TOEFL. Be sure you won't miss the second part of it, so that you'd fully increase your chances of getting that perfect score. As you may have already learned from our previous lesson video, an independent essay is composed of at least 300 words. So this means there are a lot of points of improvement or areas of the essay where you can potentially increase your score. The things that we will talk about today are the major variables of your score in the independent writing task. They are language use and content. In addition, I will also give you some helpful advice on the things you should not include in your essay. So let us begin your journey toward earning a perfect score in independent writing task. Let's start with the most basic facet of your essay, subject-verb agreement. As basic it may seem, it is an area where many test takers fail to pay attention to, and thus receiving point deductions due to either failure to check or lack of know-how. Now to refresh your skills, the rule with subject-verb agreement is that the verb must agree with the subject in number. Meaning, singular subject takes a singular verb. Likewise, a plural subject takes a plural verb. Here are some examples. In the sentence, Teacher Fish has been a TOEFL teacher for more than 15 years. Notice that the subject of the sentence is only one in number, Teacher Fish, so we use the singular form of the verb, has or has been. Conversely, in the sentence, students study the TOEFL with Teacher Fish to earn high scores. The subject of the sentence, students, with S, is in its plural form, so the verb, study, must also be in its plural form. But what about subjects that are a bit more complex? For instance, non-count nouns and collective nouns. With regard to non-count nouns, as a general rule, they take singular verbs. However, when these nouns are accompanied by a so-called partitive, then it would be a different thing. Partitives are expressions like piece of, glass of, pair of, and other similar expressions. They have plural forms, so even if the nouns that follow them are uncountable, the verbs should be in their plural forms. For instance, the noun, information, obviously is uncountable, so it takes a singular verb. However, if the noun is preceded by a plural form of a partitive, for example, pieces of, so now information becomes pieces of information, then the verb has to be plural. Here it is in a sentence. Important pieces of information are shared with the students. The word information is followed by a plural verb, are, since the partitive that is used before the noun is plural, pieces of. As for collective nouns, they are singular in form, and as a rule, they take on singular verbs. For example, the collective nouns, committee, police, and class, are all composed of more than one member. However, they are taken or counted as one. So the verb has to be singular. That is again, unless you use a partitive, to quantify the individuals who are part of the mentioned examples. Here is what I am talking about. Members of the committee are going to attend the annual meeting. So by principle, non-count nouns and collective nouns follow the same rule. So why are we still learning about these things? They are so basic, you might wonder. Remember, in the TOEFL, although it is a bit lenient with grammar errors, basic ones like subject-verb agreement would account for higher deductions. Don't forget, the more basic the errors are, the higher points you lose. And so, on to our next topic. Verb parallelism. This is another basic aspect of grammar, yet, if not the most, one of the most troubled areas of many test takers. In my experience, a big chunk of points are lost due to faulty verb tenses. In writing, the verb tenses cannot just be swinging or shifting. Isn't it you learned in grammar that a sentence must be consistent with its tense? Let's have this example. If I say, at 6 a.m., Teacher Fish ate his sandwich and drank his milk. Then I am committing a big mistake because the verbs, ate and drink are not parallel. Which, I should have made drink as drank to make the verbs accord with the time, 6 a.m. Now we all know this. However, When writing paragraphs, we sometimes forget to be consistent with verb tenses. Remember this rule. You are only allowed to shift verb tenses if the statement or sentence you are writing is accompanied by time markers or time expressions. Let us have this example again. 10 years ago, only parents who desired to send their children to foreign universities invested on English education, but now almost even those who do not have plans of sending their children abroad apportion a sum of money for English education. Despite having verbs in different tenses, our sample sentence is correct because of the time expressions used. In the first part, the time marker, 10 years ago, allowed us to make use of the past tense of the verbs desired and invested. Whereas, in the second half of it, we used the verbs do not have and apportion, both in the present, because of the time expression now. Another part of speech that we frequently use in an essay are nouns. Nouns are usually the subjects or objects of our sentences. And so, in a paragraph, especially in an essay, just imagine how many times we will use nouns. So, when writing an essay, aside from substituting your nouns with synonyms or related expressions, we can also use pronouns, especially for nouns that do not have synonyms, like proper nouns or specific names, to avoid repetition of words. Here is an example again. Teacher Fish has been teaching the TOEFL for more than 15 years. Teacher Fish has used many types of materials in class. Teacher Fish has also seen the changes the TOEFL has undergone. In all three sample sentences, we used the same noun, which is teacher fish. Don't they sound repetitive? This is exactly what I am talking about. Instead of saying teacher fish all the way, why not substitute teacher fish in the second and third sentences with the pronoun he? By doing so, you avoid repeating the same noun, and won't be dubbed as having limited knowledge of the English grammar. Since we are talking about substituting nouns, let us now proceed to word choice. Remember that not only nouns need to be substituted in an essay. There are also other words or expressions that may require you to do word replacement, like verbs or adjectives. As mentioned earlier, synonyms and related expressions are very useful in situations where you need to avoid using the same vocabulary. However, to increase your chances of earning a perfect or at least a high score in independent writing, you must be strategic with your word choice. Now, in doing so, try to dig into your vocabulary bank. Instead of making use of commonly used terms or words, try to replace them with less common, but the same context expressions. Here are some examples. So instead of simply saying, gather, replace it with less common vocabulary like, amass or accrue. Instead of saying, attitude, try substituting the word with vocabulary like, demeanor or inclination. But, be careful not to overwhelm the readers with your word replacements. I mean, you still have to facilitate easier understanding of the essay. A good way of showing how wide your working vocabulary is by making use of one or two technical word substitutes in each paragraph of the essay. This way, the readers will still have a smooth read of your essay, at the same time would have a good grasp of how high your level of vocabulary is. Aside from word substitutes, transitions are also one area of the essay that is rather important. These words or expressions, when used in an essay, make sentences flow together more effectively. On my other video about independent writing task, remember I mentioned that for an essay to get a perfect score of 5, enough transitions should be used. Let us enumerate the possibilities where you might need to use transitions. First, you need to use a transition when writing an optional sentence instead of background information in the introduction, to show contrast when presenting the two sides of the prompt. For example, some people say learning English is important. Others believe learning it is just a waste of time. Now, the two sentences may be enough to make readers understand what you are trying to say, but wouldn't it be better understood if you use a transition of contrast in between your sentences? Here is a sample again. Some people say learning English is important. Nevertheless, others believe learning it is just a waste of time. Or, in spite of others' belief that learning English is a waste of time, some people say it is important. Now, Don't the two sample sentences have the same message as our first sentence? But the difference is, the transitions we used will help the readers better understand what we wrote. Another part of the essay that may require the use of transitions is when you introduce your thesis statement. In doing so, refer to the previous sentence, the background information, or the optional statement. Simple rule: if the previous sentence and your opinion share the same sentiment, then make use of a transition that shows support, like, in the same manner, in accordance, or likewise. Vice versa, if the previous sentence and your opinion differ, then make use of a transitional expression like, on the contrary, in contrast, or however. And so, the next part of the essay that needs the use of transitional expressions is when you introduce your body paragraphs. Remember, you at least need to write 2 body paragraphs, so making use of transitions will signal your readers which part of your essay they are reading. When writing your body paragraphs, it is best to start with transitions like, first, second, or, to begin with, moreover. You may also use expressions like, one reason is, another reason is. For instance, one reason learning English is beneficial is that it provides an individual more job opportunities. Similarly, when writing your concluding paragraph, start it with transitions like, in conclusion, in sum, or to summarize. Here is an example. In conclusion, learning English is essential, since it widens one's job opportunity, and facilitates better communication with people from other nations. Other parts of the essay where you might need to use transitions are when giving an example, when adding information, or when making a comparison or a contrast. The phrases, for example, for instance, and such as, are good choices when giving an example. Conversely, when adding information, you may use expressions like, in addition, furthermore, and as equally important as. As for comparison, you have choices like, by the same token, in the same way, and likewise. Lastly, to show contrast, you may again use transitions such as, nonetheless, whereas, and yet. Next, idioms. Idioms are words, phrases, or expressions that have figurative meanings. Basically, when using idioms in your essay, you are showing the readers how familiar with the English language you are. Using such also demonstrates how comfortable you are in both formal and informal English. When you want to make the essay sound more conversational, using idioms can give your writing a more relaxed tone. Here are some examples of idiomatic expressions. Against the clock, crunch time, and back in the day. Here it is in a sentence. When writing an independent essay, test takers are usually against the clock. Since idioms have figurative meanings, we do not actually fight or oppose the clock, as in against the clock. It is just another way of saying to finish something as fast as possible, because the deadline is approaching. So again, if you want to increase your chances of earning an excellent score in the aspect of vocabulary, try to insert a few idiomatic expressions to it. Now for the last part of our discussion concerning language use, we now move to sentence structure. Too many sentences with the same structure and length can grow monotonous for readers. Varying sentence style and structure can also reduce repetition and add emphasis. Long sentences work well for incorporating a lot of information, and short sentences can often emphasize crucial points. However, many writers have the dilemma of varying their sentence styles, and that they are even time-consuming. But, what we will discuss are the types that would not create much trouble, and at the same time, will not consume much of your time. Also remember that, when varying sentences in the essay, always make use of active sentences. The reason being, active sentences are more preferred by readers, simply because they are easier to comprehend. For topic sentences, try using a simple sentence or a one-part statement. Remember that a topic sentence contains important ideas in the essay, so it is better to simplify them, at least in structure, so they would be better understood by the readers. For example, you may write your topic sentence like, to start with, learning English provides an individual better career opportunities. As you can see, our sample sentence has a topic, which is learning English, then the controlling idea provides an individual better career opportunities. Again, by doing so, you are able to convey your message in a clear and direct manner. Now for other details in your essay, like the thesis statement and supporting sentences, use compound sentences or complex sentences. Before I give you some samples, let us first review what these sentences are. A compound sentence is made up of two independent clauses, and combined or connected by a coordinating conjunction. Independent clauses are those that can stand alone, or are sentences on their own. As with coordinating conjunctions, remember the acronym, FANBOYS. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Here is an example of a compound sentence. Learning about the TOEFL can be difficult, but it can also be rewarding. Notice that the sentence has two individual parts. Learning the TOEFL can be difficult, is the first. Learning it can also be rewarding, is the second. Then the two sentences were made into one, with the use of the coordinating conjunction, but. On the other hand, a complex sentence is also a two-part sentence, but is composed of one independent clause, and one dependent clause, a clause that does not indicate a full meaning. Made as one sentence again with the use of this time, a subordinating conjunction. Now, just to name a few subordinating conjunctions, they are words like, because, although, while, after, and until. Always remember, the subordinating conjunction is always a part of your subordinating clause. Anyway, here is an example. Although the TOEFL is difficult, it can also be rewarding. As the conjunction, although, becomes a part of the first clause, it is considered as a dependent one. Whereas the statement that comes after the comma is an independent clause, since it conveys a full meaning. So remember that varying the sentence types in your essay will significantly contribute to the increase of your score in the aspect of language. It was even mentioned in the TOEFL scoring rubric. Before we move to the second variable of your score, let us first have a recap of how you'd increase your chances of earning a perfect score in terms of language use. Starting with grammar, always be sure to check the basics like subject-verb agreement, verb tense parallelism, then noun reference. As for vocabulary, we have word substitutes. Always try to make use of less common vocabulary, but remember to be strategic. Next is the use of transitions. Then, a few idiomatic expressions will surely contribute to your score. Finally, make use of varied sentences. Simple sentences for important or major ideas in the essay, like topic sentences, while for other details, make use of compound and complex sentences. And so, we have reached the end of the first part of our video, about how you'd earn a perfect, or at least a high score on the independent writing task of the TOEFL. Do not forget to watch the second part, so that you'd fully increase your chances of getting a top score with independent writing. For other TOEFL lesson videos and practices, please visit my channel. The name is again TeacherFish 1019, without space. Also for comments, suggestions, or feedback, leave them on the comment section, and I will do my best to answer them as fast as I can. Lastly, please do not forget to press like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, so that you'd be informed every time I upload a new lesson or practice. And always remember, the TOEFL is not difficult, if you know what to do. With that, see you on the next episode of Learn the TOEFL the Easy Way with Teacher Fish.